Welcome to Mom Enough Live. I'm Erin Erickson here with my mom, Marti Erickson, and we are so excited to welcome our guest today, Dawn Nickel. Our event today is She Recovers Every Darn Day, and this is a joint partnership between Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation and Mom Enough, and we are so grateful to Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation for making this event possible. And we're also very grateful for our guest, Dawn Nickel, or Mama Dawn, as she is affectionately known in the women's recovery space. She is passionate about redefining recovery, ending the shame and stigma around it, and ensuring that women are supported to find and follow pathways and patchworks of recovery. A survivor of intimate partner violence and cancer, and with over 35 years of recovery from substance use, Nickel currently identifies as being in active recovery from workaholism and the patriarchy. She and her daughter, Taryn Strong, accidentally started a worldwide women's recovery movement called She Recovers when they started a Facebook page in that name in 2011. And that has grown and grown, and she actually is joining us today from Mexico, and she's leading a retreat there. And we're just so grateful to have you, Dawn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
I echo that, Dawn. I'm really happy to have you with us. I'm Marti, Erin's mom, and you have an amazing story to tell. I wish we had 2 hours so you could really go into even more than you'll be able to in our 30 minutes or so conversation. But I'd love it if you would just start us off by telling us a little bit about your journey. And it sounds like you've experienced quite a bit on your road to recovery, into and still in recovery, as you very wisely point out.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm just one of those people. I grew up in a middle-class home. We had all of our needs taken care of, I would say, except maybe for emotionally. You know, my mom and dad did their very best, and they really were very good people. They were busy working. They had their own traumas from their childhood. And so the emphasis for them was on working and earning and making a beautiful home, and less so on nurturing and paying attention to our emotions and those types of things. So I grew up relatively happy and certainly well taken care of, but always had this feeling that, that I wasn't loved, that there were, that I wasn't really supported, that emotions, I didn't really know what they were because they kind of weren't allowed in our family. So as happens to many of us children who kind of grow up in whatever type of dysfunction it is. And certainly I have to say that my own dysfunction was so much less serious than many of the other women that I've met over the years. And for that, I'm grateful. But nonetheless, I did end up finding that numbing out on substances was something that worked for me. And it wasn't because I wasn't never one of those people that, I took drugs and, this is the answer, and I love it. I just had a lot of anxiety, and I self-medicated with drugs. I didn't have anxiety or did drugs, and I did a lot of different drugs. So and from the very beginning, I didn't like taking drugs or drinking. I didn't feel right. I got really sick. I drank, and yet I just continued to do it. So I had a pretty short-lived addiction period from the time I was about 16 till I was 20 when I got pregnant with my first daughter. I lived pretty dangerously, and I was a daily user of a lot of dangerous drugs. And then I got pregnant. And from that time I was 20 till I was 27, I became more of a binge user, and I would binge primarily alcohol. I'd put away a lot of the hard drugs, not all of them. Maintained a pretty close relationship with cocaine for many years. But by the time I was 27, the gig was up. I had 2 daughters, and I just, I'd been trying. I felt like I'd been trying since I was 17 to stop using substances. So finally, when I was 27, I made a deal with the counselor that I was seeing that if I couldn't stop on my own, I would go into treatment. And of course, I thought I was going to be able to stop on my own and I wouldn't need to go to treatment. And of course, I couldn't stop on my own. So I went to treatment when I was 27 years old. And I haven't drank alcohol or used cocaine since. I did for the first several years of my recovery smoke an awful lot of pot. That was my harm reduction period. I just wasn't ready to live life on its own terms. But I still consider myself to have been in recovery since 1987. And I've not used any drugs to alter my mood, except for one period of time in the year 2000 when my mom passed away. And I was in such severe pain. She'd had leukemia for 16 months. And terminal illness can be so I was one of her primary caregivers, and it was just so traumatic that after she passed away, I took her drugs. I mean, I say I took them as they were prescribed, and I took them just over a period of about 36 hours. And I wasn't trying to get high or to get loaded or anything. I just needed to numb out. I just couldn't feel the pain that I was feeling. So when I talk about changing my mood with mood altering substances, that was the last time that I did that. And that'll be 23 years coming up in April.
Wow.
Recovery for me looked like, I was introduced when I left treatment. I joke, I say, when you left treatment in 1987, nobody said, go and listen to some podcasts, read some Quit Lit, hop on Facebook and join some groups and listen to, it was, no, thou shalt leave here, thou shalt go to 12-step recovery. And that's all there was. And I did. And I went to 12-step recovery, and I still consider myself a very grateful member of a 12-step program that I truthfully am no longer particularly involved in. I always say She Recovers kind of takes up a lot of my recovery space and a lot of my life space. But I still enjoy getting to meetings once in a while. I go to meetings for people who are addicted, and I have nothing but gratitude for those programs. And I recognize that how privileged I am to have had other avenues to explore in my recovery. 12-step anonymous programs are still the most easily available, freest, written in more languages than any other program. And, I never hesitate to recommend that women I know who are seeking to develop their own individualized pathway and patchwork of recovery, I always say, try it, just do try it. So over the years, I, kind of got my life back together. I left an abusive relationship when I was in treatment. I never went back to that marriage. I took my 2 little girls, we moved away. I ended up going back to university. I stayed for 13 years, ended up in a relationship with a lovely man in recovery. We've been married now for 31 years. And just kind of started working on life. School took up a lot of my time. My kids took up a lot of my time. And, recovery was always there, and sometimes on the back burner and sometimes like right here. And what happened for me was over a number of years, it evolved out of leaving university. And when I got out of university, at around the same time that I finished university, I contracted cancer. So once I got through a year of chemotherapy, I kind of felt like, okay, I was addicted till I was 27. And then I did all this stuff. And then I went to university for 13 years. And I had cancer and was treated for a year. And now I'm so behind that I really have to catch up. I got to go. So I started teaching at the university, and I was doing consulting work on the side. And I took a full-time job in government, leading a large research shop. And I just burnt myself out over 6 years. And so in 2011, I hit the wall. I always say that, I felt the same way at the bottom of my workaholism kind of period. Well, not the end of, but when I realized I was a workaholic, I felt the same way as I had when I was finishing up with my substance use career. My relationships were in tatters around me. My physical health was declining. My mental health I was just a disaster. So I used that opportunity in 2011 to start digging back into my recovery. Only this time it was recovery from overworking, from burnout. And as I recognized, it was from anxiety and it was from grief. And it was all the other things that I hadn't dealt with, not only since I'd been in recovery, but there's always more stuff to uncover from childhood. So started back on a recovery journey. And in 2011, we also started, I started blogging. I went on a leave. I started a blog called Recovering Dawn and started having this conversation about women in recovery and how we are all in recovery from something. And, it really doesn't matter what it is. Once we recognize that we have some growing to do, that we should be supported to find out how we can do that. And we need access to all the various ways there are to do that. We need to be able to choose and try and stumble and fall and not be judged, whether we're picking up alcohol again or picking up whatever it is, or, returning to those unhealthy relationships. We just need support and understanding and compassion and not judgment. So that blog turned into a Facebook page, which turned into, which my daughter, Taryn, who was also a young woman in recovery, taught me. I didn't even know how to make a Facebook fan page. At the time, that's what they were called. And I was like, I don't have any fans. Why would I want a fan page? And she's, well, that's just what they call them. But we did start a conversation in cyberspace, and it continues to this day. We have a Facebook following now of about 270,000 people.
Wow.
And over the years, She Recovers just turned it from this kind of Facebook page and a couple of retreats here and there into what is now a 501c3 nonprofit foundation in the United States. We train recovery coaches. We have online mental health programs. We have online meetings twice a day. We have a variety of meetings that are for different identity-based groups by, Black, Indigenous, women of color, LGBTQ, mothers of high needs children, legal professionals, and so on. And now I've gone back to my life. I still have 3 lives. I don't have 3 jobs anymore, but I have 3 lives. I have She Recovers, which I love, and I'm the founder and the co-chair of the foundation. I also have a consulting business that pays the bills and allows me to live, the life that I need to live. And then, my personal recovery, my family, kind of everything else. So the thing about She Recovers, in my view, is that it's just, it's a place where we recognize that certain tenets. We have 10 intentions and guiding principles, and the foundational one is we're all in recovery from something, and we get to do it kind of how we need to do it, and we need that support from others. So that's a long how do you do, but
such a powerful story. And I really love this idea that we're all in recovery from something. I in jest sometimes will say to my kids, oh, someday you'll talk to your therapist about that, but it's, even just in our relationship. And I mean, we all have things throughout our lives, challenges and trials and ways that we're not maybe living our healthiest life. And I think that in our culture today, especially, this kind of workaholism and burnout and just kind of overextending ourselves, we're pulled in so many different directions. And, we have Instagram and Facebook and all these social media platforms. And there's so many things that are kind of pulling us or kind of maybe even enticing us. And it can be really easy to get pulled off our center and to lose sight of what's really important. And I loved how you talked about these 3 parts of your life and how that third part of family and recovery and connection is so important, and just amazing what you've done with She Recovers. And I love that you and your daughter did that together. And what a beautiful story of kind of taking your recovery and sharing what you've learned and empowering others to do what you've done.
And taking your relationship.
We talk a lot about intergenerational. Sorry.
Oh, I was
we talk
just
a lot
saying,
about intergenerational trauma and intergenerational wisdom, right? So, I mean, that's what it really is we kind of take what we know. And I'll just say that the idea that we're all recovering from something, we talk about that a lot because, right, for instance, now I'm in a retreat with 21 women who many of them say when they come here, they identify as being in recovery from substance use. But underneath, they're all in recovery from their childhood. Like they really are. So we're so much more alike than different. And I think if we focus on that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Mom, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to comment on the mother-daughter thing and kind of living your life in public in so many ways. And, Erin and I both, I know, can relate to that because we've chosen to do that. And it has its moments, its challenges, but it's really such a privilege. And Erin and I have worked together since 2006 when we first had a live radio show for several years and then took it to the internet as a podcast before we even knew the word podcast. So we've been doing what we're doing for that many years. And of course, mother-daughter for more years than I'll say out loud. Erin might not want to give away her age, but
I don't mind.
All right, 46. So anyway, I really feel that connection with you. And as we chatted a bit before this event today, hearing about the sorts of things you and Taryn are doing together, it just warms my heart. And I think, we all, mothers and daughters, wherever we are in our journey, can learn so much from each other. And, it leads us to a place too of just kind of really appreciating all the ups and the downs that we've experienced together in our lives. So really, really a powerful story, and kudos to you for how you're hanging in there with that journey and how you're letting so many other people learn from you and with you.
It's a co-creation. Absolutely. I mean, we talk about the idea that we just started the conversation and everybody else has just chimed in, and it's just, it goes on and around and up and down, and it's an important conversation. I think it's so important in this day and age where as somebody who does healthcare policy, I'm still always a little bit surprised. There's not one model fits all in recovery from anything, regardless of what it is. And so we just really need to talk more and more about people and educate and raise public awareness about all the different things that there are to recover from. And when we talk about, I think saying that we're all in recovery from something does more to end stigma than just about anything. It's just, like I can sit in and go, oh, like, so you're addicted to heroin. I was addicted to cocaine. And somebody else can say, well, I was addicted to men. And somebody else can say, I was addicted to food. Or, it's like, that's kind of maybe how we got here with that identification. But again, you dig in and you realize it's so much deeper than that. And that we can heal those underlying wounds, so that we can, and the recovering out loud is one of our intentions and guiding principles, is when we are ready, we recover out loud, so that other women who are struggling can find and join our movement. And I mean, that's what you, Marti and Erin, have been doing for so many years. And I thank you for that, because it really is, I think the Me Too movement really, it applies in so many different ways, right? But I think in terms of mental health and behavioral health, there's nothing more powerful than hearing somebody talk about something that is true for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wonder, Dawn, if you could talk a little bit about some of the concrete tips that you might have for helping our listeners identify what it is that they want to recover from, and how they might go about that, and how they'll determine what success would look like. It's a big question.
Yeah. So I love the question. I'm going to think about it in two parts. And I'm leaning towards saying this, and I without really thinking too deeply on it, I think we usually know what it is. I think we usually know what that one thing, the biggest thing that we need to kind of address is. Or there's usually signs. And I think, again, because we're all recovering from something, that can be overwhelming. I remember when I got out of treatment the first time, I was like, okay, I know that I can go here and talk about alcohol, and I know I can go here and talk about drugs, and they were two different programs, and I can go here and talk about codependency, and I can go over here and see my therapist about, so there's so many different things. So I always encourage people to, like, what's the one thing that's taking you down the most and the fastest? And let's focus on that. And that's why I think that in a lot of women's cases in our community, it is the addiction to whatever it is, whether it's a substance or a relationship or, work, shopping, different things. And so I think that innately, so I guess what I say to people is, like, just trust yourself, trust your instincts, sit with yourself. You know what it is you need to kind of focus on first. And then in terms of setting up I love what you said about, identifying what success looks like. I'm an evaluator, so I kind of think about evaluation and a lot of this stuff too. And how are we getting there? And, we've identified the problem, and now we're going to implement that. But I think the most important thing about identifying success is, don't shoot for the stars with what your first goal is going to be. I try and encourage people, I introduce a lot of people to stages of change, right? So, the idea that, so for an example, if you are a shopper and you have a serious problem with over shopping, and you know that that's a thing that's, it's causing all sorts of problems financially in your relationship with your children, the example you're setting for your kids, all these different things. So, that's what it is. Success won't look like, okay, I'm never shopping again, I'm never buying anything ever again. That's so unrealistic. But, maybe it is, and I've actually, people have shared this, maybe it's taking the Amazon app off your phone or something like that, just, and doing that for weeks. So I'm a real big believer in baby steps, like absolute baby steps. So that's what I would kind of say is, identify something that when you say, this is my goal, in something inside you says, I think I can manage that. Because when you get there and you manage it, you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to be ready to go a little bit further. When you set something, just, it's like people who with alcohol, like, okay, this is it. And I write about this a lot in my book about day ones, because I'm so fascinated by day one. People come back after a relapse, and it's like, it's day one again. And they're so upset, and it's filled with self-loathing. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's day one again. Like, it's day one again. You try it again. This is good stuff. This is exciting, because you didn't used to have any day ones, and now you have them every 2 weeks. This is a good thing. It's okay, right? It's kind of figure out where you want to set the bar, set it low, meet it, and then exceed it, like kind of with the next thing that you do. The hardest thing, I think, is, again, using alcohol as an example, is like, we're not going to just automatically stop using our coping mechanisms. We have to replace how we cope with other modalities, with other tools, before we can give up that, which is the one we depend upon most.
So I'm thinking about just that very thing. So, what are some daily practices that might help kind of support people through the bumps and the challenges, and the triumph, of course, too. But what are some things
Yeah.
that people can do and can try on their own to start building those additional coping tools and to build the supports they need to get through this process of moving through recovery?
Yeah, and I think this is going to sound self-serving, but my own practice has been from the beginning of time since I got out of treatment, and I don't have it here. It's over by my bed, and I'm not going to get up and go it. But um, I have a daily meditation book, and it was written by a woman named Karen Casey. It was written for Hazelden. It just celebrated its 40th year, and she sold 5 million copies. And it's a daily meditation book. And my practice from the minute I got out of treatment was, like in the morning, I will read from a daily meditation book, a recovery book. I have quite a few of them, and then I just wrote one. But so I guess I'll be reading that one now. It's not even out yet till next week or the week after. But so it's just kind of that connection to recovery, and I do that with a simple, like, short little page, right, that will be on a topic that is associated somehow with recovery. And it just it makes me say to myself, yeah, I'm in recovery today. I'm doing some recovery practice today. So that's really important. The other thing I do is every day try to spend time in quiet contemplation. And, I used to say meditation, but that's not really true. I don't meditate every day. I'm trained to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. I don't generally, I do sporadically, but I'm not a regular meditator. But I do sit by myself in quiet contemplation at least once a day, and just breathe, maybe drink a cup of tea or a big glass of water. And again, just kind of move into, like, what is today feeling like? Or if it's in the morning, like, what do I want to feel like today? And kind of, just set some goals around how I want to feel, not so much as what I want to do. I'm the opposite. I have to have a list of what I shouldn't be doing today, because I'll do too much. And then the third thing for me is always, and this is a practice of connection. I'm always in touch with at least, and I say at least one, but I mean, there's probably dozens in a day, other women in recovery. Sometimes it's my daughter, quite regularly. Other women in my community, somebody in our Facebook group, or in an email. So those are the three kind of recovery-oriented practices that again, like 35 years, I've been doing these types of things. And they're really just reminders that I'm here, I'm present, and I'm in recovery. And that's what works for me. There's so many others. My daughter has a yoga practice, so she does yoga every day. Maybe not now with the brand new baby. I would try to walk outdoors every day. I try to stretch. I don't do yoga so much, but I do stretch on a yoga mat. And I try to drink a lot of water. So it's always just little simple things that I know I can do, that I try to do. And I never beat myself up if I don't do something in a day. I think that's probably the biggest piece. Is I have given up beating up myself for things that I said I was going to do. I'm pretty true to my word, and certainly I'll keep my word to you. But sometimes I just don't feel like doing the things that I told myself I was going to do. And when I don't do them, I just let it go.
I love that. Well, grace for ourselves is so important, and I so appreciate your wise words of wisdom. And I think there's something very accessible about what you're describing in this process. That drinking a glass of water, sitting and having a cup of tea, and giving ourselves permission to tune in each day to what that looks like. And if it's not on the if we don't do what's on the list, that's okay, because I do think we tend to get in our own way when we beat ourselves up for not doing what we set out to do. And that's not going to serve any of us in this process of recovery, regardless of what we're seeking to recover from. I so appreciate your time today and your wisdom, Dawn, and your remarkable story. And we will, of course, link to your page and share information about your book as well as soon as that's available. And we are also incredibly grateful to Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation for all of the amazing work they're doing to bring people like you to our audience and also to serve so many people in recovery in so many ways, and of course serving children and families and kind of the whole ecosystem as I would think of it. So thank you so much for your time today, Dawn, and thank you to all of you for tuning in as well. We so appreciate your time, and we'll be back again sometime soon with another episode of Mom Enough Live. Have a wonderful day.